Welcome to the Om Shack podcast. I'm so excited. This is our very first podcast, and I am even more excited that I have my dear friend Vanessa with me. Vanessa and I are in our secret fairy garden, so you're already special because you get to kind of be here. You don't know exactly where it is, but you're with us. So Vanessa, I'm so excited to have you here. Vanessa Gibson is a very talented woman.
Oh.
And Vanessa is, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Okay, yes. Well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so stoked, especially to be out here in this beautiful area of a fairy garden. Secret spot, but it's amazing. So my name's Vanessa Gibson, and I'm an intuitive consultant. I do energy work and lots of different ways I use my gifts and to offer services to help people get clarity, get guidance, change things in their life, whatever area of life might be bothering them. There's usually an energetic undertone that we can look at and shift through. I do like one-on-one sessions. It can be through working through the house, reading people's homes and helping them balance the energy of their home so that they can, that just gives them a good overall life haul. If you want to do that, that's a deep intensive. And I like to I teach a lot of workshops and events, just helping people get connected with their intuition, helping people guide on how they can use their intuition to gain their own clarity, to get empowerment. So there's all kinds of fun things that we can use.
And I've experienced some of those with you personally and at the Om Shack, as Vanessa is one of our team members at the Om Shack. So, but speaking of intuitive workshops, Vanessa, you have one coming up on the 11th of January at the Om Shack.
Yes.
Called Intuitive Visioning for 2025. So, I know we've talked about in the past about, considering doing maybe a weekly class or a monthly class about working on strengthening your spiritual gifts. And it just so happens that the other night after class, a client who hadn't been at the studio for a while left and had said that she's noticed through this healing process she's going through that she has these gifts, intuitive gifts herself, and she just doesn't know what to do with them. And I said, oh, well, that's perfect because we're having the intuitive visioning workshop on the 11th.
Yeah.
And I said, there's lots of ways you can do, you can work on that. So what would you say, like if somebody found these gifts, like our friend the other day, how would they best start to recognize them, or what would you suggest they start with to learn how to find these gifts, strengthen these gifts, and use them? Do you have any advice or tips or?
Oh yeah, there's like infinite ways and tools or techniques that people can use. One of my favorites for the beginning stages when you're just like coming on it is finding a practice, whether it's like journaling, or note taking in your phone, just making bringing it to your awareness when you notice something that you are thinking might be this intuitive gift, this or these heightened subtle senses starting to come alive. What that does is it almost puts it on the radar, kind of like a
mosquito.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, I wasn't hearing her. I was trying to keep her from getting stung.
So that's one really good thing. It's like a gratitude journal in a sense where it keeps you focused and it keeps your awareness now looking for that. If you're like, oh, I'm going to write down, so maybe 3 times a day, or write 3 things during the day that might have been like, oh, that was new, or that was a different experience, or I got this hit, or when I was at the grocery store, like I got this information, I just had this feeling, or this gut feeling, or I just had this knowing. So write those down, like 3 a day. And what it does is it puts your attention focused on that and your subconscious. So it's going to scan always, and it's going to naturally start building that muscle.
That makes a lot of sense, because I think that's what, everyone has intuitive gifts.
Absolutely.
When you're a child, you just don't know the difference, and you live in that imagination and that freedom and that playful childlike state, because you are a child and you're very attuned to those gifts. But the world kind of, I feel like, teaches you to like, oh no, you got to do things this way, go to work, go to school, do this, don't use, that's silly child stuff or whatever. So then you start getting conditioned to not pay attention to those gifts, and then you lose them. You don't really lose them, but you lose the awareness of them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like I think that's great to write them down. And I mean, even making voice memos if you don't feel like typing.
Yep. Look at the gifts you brought us.
Because we've all had experiences like where you're thinking about somebody, and then all of a sudden you may not have heard from them in 10 years. They call you, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy! I was just thinking about you." That's how we met. We met.
Oh my gosh!
And
this is so good.
Well, there's lots of stories about that, but I'm just going to skip to the part where I had a medical procedure, and I was kind of bedridden for a little bit, and I kept thinking, I need to call Vanessa because I know she's got these great gifts. I'm sure there's stuff we can do together. I need to call her. And then immediately I got a text from you, and you said, I feel like there's stuff that we can do together. Like, do you think we can meet? And I was like, that's too much, because as I was thinking it, you were thinking the same thing. We didn't even know each other. We just met like briefly.
Yeah.
And it was super cool. So there you go. And everything's energy, right?
Yeah.
Everything's energy, and that's how prayer works. That's how prayer works. You know, you're putting that intention and that energy towards something, whether it's praying for someone, you're putting that energy out there.
Yeah.
And it's super cool.
It is cool. So, and it is easy like that. Mm-hmm. Right? It's actually not this huge, I got to focus and make my gifts, like strengthen them and work them out. Like,
we didn't even know each other. We just met like briefly.
Yeah.
And there you go. And everything's energy, right?
Yeah.
Everything's energy, and that's how prayer works. That's how prayer works. You know, you're putting that intention and that energy towards something, whether it's praying for someone, you're putting that energy out there.
Yeah.
And it's super cool.
It is cool. So, and it is easy like that. Mm-hmm. Right? It's actually not this huge, I got to focus and make my gifts, like strengthen them and work them out. Like, it's not, it's being more relaxed when you're just in your moments and recognize where were the ease moments. And when they showed up, you were putting it out there out of your curiosity of like, I'm ready. I'm feeling like I need some support, or I know I'm in, like, there's just something off. And then I come to mind the ease of, oh, yeah, that's right. That question, that listening to that, just the thought of, this girl came to my mind. Mm-hmm. That's the exercise.
Yeah.
That's the muscle building. That's the lifting the weight. It's when you get that and then you choose in a moment subtly, yeah, that's right. And then you keep in that path of thought. Mm-hmm. That's the energy you're sending out. Mm-hmm. And so then if I'm like, all the way getting gassed out, 3 cities over, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've really been meaning to like reach out to Kristen. I'm going to text her because I'm sitting waiting to get my gas filled up. And, hey, I was just been thinking about you. And so I did the same thing. I follow that little nudge. I put the energy, and now we're, infrequent. We're aligned in that frequency. And then it's like, how did that happen? Oh my God, it was magical. It's like, well, yeah, but at the same time, it's not hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we like, we want to control things, and we want to like fix things, and we want to hands-on make sure that we get this done. And like, you want to, you're thinking of somebody, you're praying for somebody, you could just pray for them, and that energy's going to go there. But a lot of times we're like, I don't have time, but I really should be going to her house and helping her. But you could just stop and pray. But we're so used to needing to see immediate gratification, to physically see. And it has to do with faith too. Having faith that when you close your eyes, meditate and pray, whether it's for someone else or for yourself, you have to have the faith that that's big enough.
Transmitting, yeah.
To transmit and to accomplish what you want. You don't always have to hands-on, but we so frequently want to just do it ourselves.
Yeah.
A lot of times we can just give it up, give it to God, the universe, whatever word you want to use for your higher power. And I feel like the more you spend time getting quiet and meditating, and the more you ask to show how to best use your gifts, like what are my gifts? How can I best use the gifts that I've been given? I've been given them for a reason. They're supposed to be used, but I don't really know how to use them. So spending quiet time allows your mind to kind of get away from the busyness, and you'll get the knowings. They'll just come. And
that's a really, really, really important good piece of the process is taking the time to slow down. It can be a minute, right? It can be 30 seconds of just quieting and asking that question. Okay, like I'm getting these info. I'm writing things every day, but then to do the ask and the receive, like the ask of like, so guide me. What's the path here with this? What is the best use for this? I love that. That's so important. And then that's the next piece is then being willing to receive what's going to show up.
Right. And I think
how might it, not to have to decide how that, oh, I know someone that does this, so this is what you must have to do with it. It's like, that's a possibility.
Right. And I know for myself, in the beginnings, especially when I started learning energy work, I would second guess myself a lot. I'd be like, wait a minute, am I just making that up? I think I feel something going on here, or I just get like, or somewhere my body will feel a little something. Maybe my stomach will get upset if I'm working on somebody and I'm like, is that them? Is it me? Is it me just making something up? Is it me wanting to find something? And the biggest thing I learned from that is that don't second guess yourself. Go with it, because it's working. That you're getting messages. You're just not used to knowing that what you're doing and feeling is really what you're finding.
Yes.
So would you have any advice on that for somebody who is just unsure of, maybe somebody's getting into energy work, or somebody is learning Reiki or any kind of healing modality, that beginning part where you're just like, am I making this up? Is it in my head? Is it because I want this? Or am I really hearing what I need to hear? What would you say to that? Or do you have any experiences with that, with yourself or with anyone else?
Oh gosh, very much. I've tons of, it's a big piece of this work is the letting go, just the trusting, like you were speaking of before, like trusting, having faith, letting go, being willing to be curious and open, being willing for it to show up through your own body and be like, oh my gosh, my stomach feels a little funny. I had a client the other day just via Zoom, and that was exactly what happened. I'm like, oh my gosh, hold on. Like I'm sensing like the liver and the stomach, but I feel like the stomach's empty. And it was because I was feeling it. And so then it was like, just verbally say what I'm experiencing. And I was like, and I'm feeling gassy, and I started burping, I'm like, it's weird, but it's like, the body. And so she goes, that is so strange. That is exactly what I've been going through. And now I have this, it's been so bad that I have an appointment to have them do a scan, find out what's going on. I said, well, and so then we looked into deeper what else was showing up. And so, the layers kept going, because I just kept being willing to not judge it, not think about it, not filter it, just kind of, okay, feel it. Just be present with the feel. If it's a physical feeling, if it's a thought, if it's a knowing, if it's a smell, if it's something you're seeing in your mind, like just describing. It's a practice. So it is, some people will come into energy work and that muscle of just playfulness and willing to, it's just more of their natural way of being. So it may be easier. Some people that may not be the case. So it just have to recognize it's like doing something brand new. You got to take the expectations off. You're not showing up right away to try and make a business and build this and be perfect. You're doing this like it's self-development, it's personal growth. This is your own spiritual growth. So give yourself the space. And
everybody sees things differently. I know a friend of mine, Angela, I remember when she first started doing this work, her intention wasn't to work with cancer patients, but for whatever reason, they just kept showing up, and all of a sudden she had like this list of people, they all had cancer, and she would see the areas of disease on them as like, I believe she said it was like black. She would just see the color black or feel like black, dark, whatever. And so she was learning and seeing however she saw. So now she sees things all different ways. She hears sometimes, or she gets knowings, or she physically feels heat, or whatever it may be. But the cancer thing, that's always black to her. So some people may just only see colors. And then as you're practicing and learning, you learn that color means something to me. Your personal body, your personal way that you see and hear and know can be completely different to someone else. Someone may feel hot or cold, or somebody may physically feel what the person's feeling. Some people may hear, like have whole sentences and conversations coming into their head that's their voice inside, but it's just like, okay, well, I'm not making that up. So everybody's different, and I feel like not having expectations as to, okay, well, my friend, when she was working on someone who was cancer, it was black. Well, if I don't see black on somebody, it doesn't mean anything. It just means that what is my way of learning what the things I'm finding, how they show up for me.
Yeah.
So it's going to be different for everybody.
I love it. This is something that's always fascinated me, is how we each individually process, receive, perceive information. I remember I was probably in like 6th grade, and I was driving with my mom, and I remember asking her, I was like, so Mom, like, when you see the color pink, like, how do I know that the color you see when you see pink in your mind is the same that I see? And she's like,
wow.
Huh? What? Well, what do you mean, like, pink? When you say pink, I was like, but how do I know, like, what you see is what I see? And she's like, I don't know. And then, so it's just, my brain's always been so curious, right? And then also, like, I think I've even asked you this before, like, so when you think of a number, like, what color is it in your mind? And like, what is the background? Right. And people are like, oh, well, that's weird. I've never thought about, but then they look in their mind's eye and they're like, oh yeah, it's white with a black background. It's blue with a yellow background. It's yellow with a blue front, number. Like it's the funniest thing. People see things differently.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, do your numbers go with, like, do they have a train? Like, are they in a specific? And people are like, no, it just shows up in one. And
yeah, so, cool.
This has been something that's very fascinating. So, I like to call it, I've kind of just summed it up and calling it the language of energy, and that we each have our own special dialect or, like our own dialect and our own accents.
Right.
You know, and then maybe even our own lettering, so, cause the imaging. So yeah, I like that.
Well, I can tell you two things cause it comes with the practicing and the trusting. First I would, I wanted to hear from my guides, my angels, God. I wanted more like solid, like hearing, like, and so I was trying so hard. And I remember one time I was just asking a question, and we know that we do the muscle testing sometimes. The muscle testing is great, by the way. That works for me every time, but I wanted to not have to do the muscle, or actually it was before I really learned, or before I started using the muscle testing. I just really try, and I started seeing colors. I always see colors. Then I was like, well, maybe I need to pay attention to the colors. So I asked my question, and I'm like, what color is yes?
Beautiful.
And then this pink turned to red, and it was like growing and expanding, and then it would get small, and then it would expand and get small. And then I was like, okay, like what does no look like? And I don't remember what color it was, but it was like in a different place in my vision, in my mind's eye. And that was that. So then I started testing it out. I'm like, well, is my son's name Brian? And my son's name isn't Brian. And then that no color came. And then I'm like, okay, but that could be me making that happen, because I know Brian is not my son's name. So I started asking all kinds of questions, and it was every time. So then I would ask my question that I really don't know the answer to, that I wanted to hear, and I got my answer through the color. So that's how it was working for me. Yep. Then it changed. It changed to where yes, or yes, you should go in that direction, or yes, this is good. I would get a little white light to the bottom right, my vision, and it would be like a little pin, and then it would get bigger, and then it would go away. Then I'd ask my next question. If it was a yes, pin gets bigger, white light, and then it goes away. If it's a no, the light's not even there. So that was my most recent one. So it's kind of cool playing around like that, You may just see colors and not understanding how to use them. Ask what does that color mean? And
it's a game of ask and receive. I mean, they hide it simply in the Bible. No one's going to follow it. We'll put it in the Bible, but it's so simple. Actually do it, maybe. Ask and receive. So this is the perfect thing where you're like, well, you get curious, and then you ask, like, well, if I, like, what do these colors mean? Or maybe could it mean yes? Could it mean no? And then sure enough, you just be open, like, let's see. And then you observe. Yeah.
And then I was like, man, all this time
is so great.
I was being told all these things, but I never even bothered to, I was just making it so complicated. I wasn't going, okay, look, this is what you're seeing right now. There's something in that.
Yes.
And what is the language? What are the definitions of these things that I'm seeing? I was just looking for something that I thought was the way I should hear it. But maybe just being like, show me, tell me, however it is that you want me to hear or see, or that's best for me, or that I will understand. So,
oh, I love that.
Yeah, I think
that's a fantastic exercise for anyone. You can just go through that experience. I mean, and that's learning like what works for you, how your language, like what your symbols are, what your, like your friend was saying, she saw black for this thing. That's what the meaning was. Meaning is something we can give something or have been given that meaning from others, whatever, but it's useful. It's a tool to have a meaning for things. So the more you understand, like, you know, your cue cards or your little alphabet in your energetic language, then it's so helpful. You start to be able to communicate and, you know, have a conversation.
And trust yourself.
And trust yourself.
And your gifts.
Yeah. So speaking of another very easy way to kind of maneuver with and keep the conversation going with energy is, you mentioned muscle testing. So that's another easy way to help people, I feel, build their trust and confidence in their, you know, their journey. That was really helpful for me. I learned muscle testing years back, and I still use it. You know, I still use it, if not, but it's been a tool that got me using it so often for such a chunk of time. It's gotten to the point where I don't require it all the time, but I can always fall back if I'm deciding, ooh, I don't want to trust myself, or let me double check. It's there. And so it's a really useful tool.
I think that's another episode, maybe.
I think so.
Muscle testing.
Muscle testing is a great, yeah. Oopsie, now you have the mosquito.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. See? We help each other
We're not
in
eating each other.
Well, Vanessa, thank you so much for coming to the fairy garden and sharing. And we hope that you come back and share with us again in the fairy garden with Carly and I.
I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me. This was such a joy. All right. We'll be back.
See you soon.